Golden Path, its healing is negligible, and After Image leans you more towards a healing utility versus having more overall power for dungeons. Unbreakable Spirit, I think we have to have it, only because it does help us get down to Divine Purpose, but this reduces the cooldown of your wings, your Divine Shield, and any of your big defensives. Here, I think Touch of Light, this is supposed to be what Sanctified Wrath's extra damage was on retail. This is supposed to supplant that type of damage, but unfortunately it just doesn't proc enough for it to be a viable choice on this node, whereas Incandescence, leading towards the build I'm having for Mythic Plus, has an opportunity just to give you free damage, something that you don't have to think about or manage. And with how it works with some of our other talents, I think that I'm picking Incandescence over Touch of Light. So for base level 60, we have, 8 more points to spend. It is, but it also just, I'll show you the reasonings behind all of these things off this last breakdown from this dungeon that we just ran. I don't use, it's hard to use sack right now because you don't know the damage profiles of everything, but Recompense is an interesting talent. It gives us an opportunity to have a really hard hitting judgment or a really big Word of Glory, and I think this is gonna incentivize Ret Paladins or Paladins in general to use their sack more often, help their healers out, help their tank out. If you realize that somebody doesn't have a defensive up, it can be extremely useful, and not only saving somebody, but also giving you just a slight little damage increase. We need 1 more point to get to this next row. Depending on the dungeon, you can either go faster Blessing of Protection, so 3 minutes cooldown, so a 2-minute Blessing of Protection, which again, in a physical damage heavy dungeon, this can be more beneficial than something that can be more beneficial than having spell wording in that situation. But you can, if you know a dungeon has heavier magic damage, or you can completely negate boss mechanics with Blessing of Spell Warding, I think this goes 100% based on that dungeon and what you're running, and you can freely switch between the two. Both are going to be extremely helpful, but I think it's situational. Here, Divine Purpose is always a choice over Holy Avenger, just because you're never ever going to be holy power starved anymore, and then this just gives you the opportunity to have a harder hitting free holy power spender. I believe that's magical, but I can double check. So we have 5 more points. Hallowed Ground, I think, is a must-have, especially while leveling up. Seal of the Crusader, again, I believe it's a must-have, but further down. If I'm building this as leveling up, I would go Aspirations of Divinity, because what that does is I think I can stack up to 3 times, and it's 157 main stat every stack. So you're looking at just under 500 strength if you have it fully stacked up. And that, I mean, that's just pure damage. We have 2 more points, and I think for leveling purposes, we go of Dusk and Dawn and Seal of Order. Of Dusk and Dawn is going to be 6% damage and healing every time you're in Blessing of Dawn, 4% DR every time you're in Blessing of Dusk, and then what Seal of Order does is that it gives your holy power spenders 10% more increased damage during Dawn, like Blessing of Dawn, and then when you're in Blessing of Dusk, it actually recharges. You get CDR on your Crusader Strike, which will bode well for Aspirations of Divinity, your Blade of Wrath, your Hammer of Wrath. As far as I know, it does not affect Wake of Ashes. I don't know if that's a bug. I don't know if that's intended, but as of right now, it's not affecting the cooldown of Wake of Ashes. Because it would take about 4.5 seconds off of Wake of Ashes every time that it procced. Yeah, Crusader Strike is it's a holy power builder. But so this is probably how I would structure at level 60. But moving past that, I would put 2 into Seal of Alacrity. That's just a base 4% haste. I would do 2 into Seal of the Crusader because that has an opportunity to put a debuff on your enemies that makes your holy power spenders. Actually, it just increases the holy damage that they take by 10%. And then I would go Mad Paragon. It increases Hammer of Wrath damage, and it also extends wings by 1 second every time you cast Hammer of Wrath. I leaned away from Sanctified Wrath because it does not have the damage component as it does in retail. You're not losing a ton of wing time. You're not holy power starved, so Judgment generating a second holy power isn't really necessary right now. Again, you don't have the damage component like you do in retail, so you're not getting that extra burst of damage during your Sanctified Wrath window. Overall, I think this talent is just extremely underwhelming because you don't have the damage component. I believe the damage component was put in Touch of Light. And again, it just does not proc enough for me to choose that over Incandescence. I'm going to move into the Ret side of it. Again, you have to take Blade of Justice to go anywhere. That is your bigger holy power generator. So at base, it generates 1 holy power. Don't raid into the 2 holy power. You have to talent into that. Divine Storm, again, this is one of your holy power spenders. Anything over 2 targets, I Divine Storm, just because 16,000 damage on both targets is better than, is it like 20? It's better to hit 2 targets with that than 1 target with Templar's Verdict. Art of War, we have this baseline currently in retail. As you'll notice, the proc chance for it to happen is halved. On retail right now, it is 24% chance to reset the cooldown of Blade of Justice, but for beta right now, it is only 12%. From here, some of these nodes, we have reduced cooldown of your Judgment. Again, I don't think we're going to be holy power starved. I don't believe that this is going to be a choice that we pick. Improved Crusader Strike is what I'm going to put in, so that gives your Crusader Strike 2 charges. Again, that works very well with Aspirations of Divinity because then you can continue to keep stacks of that up, keep stacks of your strength, and just do more damage. Increase your mastery by 2%. I personally don't care for increased stat by X% talent nodes. I just don't think they're necessary. Plus, it takes away from potentially getting something further, something better later on in the tree. Holy Blade, this is what causes your whole Blade of Justice to generate 2 holy power instead of 1. I am taking that over Condemning Blade because you don't need your critical strike chance of that to be increased. Blade of Wrath, again, this is one that causes your Art of War to proc 100% more often, increasing this chance to, I want to say it increases it to that 24% because it can happen 100% more often, and it just increases the damage 25%, so you're going to get more damage out of that one. I will never, ever, ever, ever pick Shield of Vengeance over Divine Protection. The fact that Ret now has an actual defensive makes us infinitely more tanky than absorbing 4,200 damage versus like putting like a damage reduction on. So I will pick Divine Protection every time. To move forward, we do need 1 more point. It goes into Zeal. This synergizes very well with Art of War because when you judge, you attack 30%, like your auto attacks happen 30% faster. So the faster you auto attack, the more opportunities you have for Art of War to proc. High Lord's Judgment just increases the damage done by your judgment. Again, I think that's a no-brainer. Plus, you just need to do it in order to move forward in the talent tree. Yeah, I mean, again, this does pretty much nothing on retail. This will always be the pick. If we could have both, I would have both, but if we have to pick between one or the other, it's always going to be Divine Protection. Righteous Verdict, again, what that does is that makes your next Templar's Verdict hit harder within 6 seconds of your previous. Really good for single target. Wake of Ashes, we have to talent into it. It's our biggest holy power generator, and it does really good AoE frontal damage. This is where a lot of people are going to change. Actually, I'm going to continue going forward until we have 5 points left. I will always go Crusade in this situation because when it's fully stacked, you have an increased 30% haste and damage and healing done. And the way that this interacts with Mad Paragon is that you can continue to extend Crusade the more Hammers of Wrath you get out. So with this current build right here, you can have anywhere between 30 to 35 seconds of wings instead of 25. So you'll have potentially 10 more seconds of 30% haste and damage done. So we need to spend 7 more points to break into this one. I like taking Consecrated Blade. This goes into the consecration build, and what this does is when your Art of War procs and you get Blade of Wrath, what it does is that it puts a completely separate instance of consecration on the ground. So at any one point, you can have, depending on how many procs of Art of War that you have, you could have up to 3, 4 separate instances of consecration, all doing damage. With that being said, gets me to my next point, Calm Before the Storm. What this does, as you can see, is that it makes Divine Storm, when you hit an enemy with your Divine Storm, they take 100% more damage from your consecration. Yeah, so this has a lot of synergy with this, mainly because this has affected every instance of consecration. The one that you put down, any that you proc from Consecrated Blade. With that, I take Sanctification. What Sanctification does is that your consecration has the opportunity to generate you holy power. That chance is increased the more targets that are in your consecration. The chance is also increased if you have more than one instance of consecration down. So again, you're leaning towards not being holy power starved. It also makes consecration an ability you want to hit. Whereas on retail right now, you don't want to touch it at all. So it gives it purpose. It gives it the ability to be a useful thing to hit, so you're not holy power starved. I think a lot of Ret Paladins are going to take Ashes to Dust, which is what our 4 set is currently. But with the Consecration build, you don't want to take it. Because anytime that you proc Art of War, it has an opportunity to not proc Blade of Wrath. And if you had previously used Blade of Wrath and it's on cooldown, you have an opportunity to waste a proc of Consecrated Blade. Plus, I mean, you miss out a little bit on an AoE damage profile to a degree, but when you can get multiple instances of Consecration down, with that 100% damage increase, you're not going to be losing too much holy power, because instead of generating 3, you're generating 2. But you're also having the opportunity to generate more with Sanctification. Exactly, Beagle. It's giving it an opportunity to be actually something you want to hit. The next one, again, this is for Mythic Plus. The next one I would do is Empyrean Power. That just gives your Crusader Strike, again, 2 charges, the opportunity to give you a free Divine Storm that does 25% additional damage. And then we pick Tempest of the Lightbringer, which is the current Mythic Plus Legendary. And we need 2 more points in order to move forward. Healing Hands. Some people like Selfless Healer. I see the benefits of it. I stack up the 4 times. It's a free Flash of Light. Whereas Word of Glory doing 100% based on the target's missing health. And if you lay on hand somebody who's really low, it puts on a shorter cooldown. It becomes no longer a 7-minute cooldown. It can become a 3-minute cooldown. So you can get potentially another big heal out there. Here, you could probably pick a few things in order to move forward. Because you do need to pick 1 more in order to move forward. Could it be worth Wake of Ashes Burn? Probably not, with not getting as many procs. If you're taking Ashes as Dust, I could see you taking Truth's Wake. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be taking either of those. More Blade of Wrath procs. Potentially Expurgation could be an item that you pick. Again, I think it's going to be completely situational, and this might have to come up to a sim. Seal of Wrath is kind of what Bringing Clarity is, but instead of having an 88% chance, you have a 25% chance every time. Cast a Judgment for it to cast again, dealing extra damage. It's negligible. I've been playing with it. I thoroughly don't enjoy that playstyle. So for me, I think the best one is Boundless Judgment. It gives your Judgment a 25% chance to jump to a nearby enemy. Which, when it does that, it does put this Judgment debuff on them, thus they're taking more damage from whatever you hit them with. And the way I think it works is that Judgment has a 25% chance to bounce. And if it bounces, that Judgment has a 25% chance to bounce. So you have an opportunity to have 3 Judgments out there without really thinking about it. It can proc, it can't proc. I think this is what we pick in order to move forward. I know a lot of Paladins are going to want to have that extra 3% haste. I don't think it's necessary because we take Ashes to Ashes. This is currently our 2-set bonus, and it gives us 4 seconds of Seraphim, which is 8% haste, mastery, or haste, crit, versatility, and 13% mastery. You guys are probably going to disagree with me. I will probably never take Divine Toll in this expansion. Divine Toll without Ringing Clarity is useless. Divine Toll in a single target situation without Ringing Clarity is useless. It's just not worth spending the talent on when, with all of this great AoE potential, you can enter into a more consistent AoE and single target. So after this, my next 2 points are going to go into Templar's Vindication. And this is just like the Conduit. It gives your Templar's Verdict a 30% chance to strike again for 30% of the damage. Now, because looking at it from giving us 5 points, this is what I would probably build for leveling going and starting at level 60. So, with taking Final Verdict, this has a lot of really good synergy with Crusade. That has a lot of synergy with Mad Paragon. Because with Final Verdict, you have an opportunity to reset your cooldown of Hammer of Wrath, which will extend Crusade by 1 second. So the more opportunities you have to reset Hammer of Wrath, the more opportunities you have time to add to Crusade, which is just raw damage output. So this is probably where I would sit at level 60, looking into leveling up. Now we have 5 more points to go through. I would put 2 into Vanguard's Momentum because it gives you an extra charge of Hammer of Wrath. And when you hit things with your Hammer of Wrath, it gets a stacking buff for you to potentially do 12% more holy damage. So you are incentivized to throw Hammer of Wrath during wings, because not only are you getting 30% increased damage and healing, you're also getting potential 12% just holy damage done in your wings window. I hate that we have to take Virtuous Command, but again, we need to take it in order to get to our last talent, which is Final Reckoning. And Final Reckoning, it is an uncapped AoE ability, and what it does, anything hit by it takes 50% increased damage from your holy power spenders. So in a big AoE pull, what we can do is you hit wings, right? Hammer of Wrath, Final Reckoning. So at this point, you are starting to stack up your damage increasing. Then you have 8% holy damage done, 50% from anything going, right? And then you Divine Storm, which causes any of your consecrations in order to do more damage. Plus, if you cap your holy power, you're doing 6% more holy damage, and your holy power spenders are doing 10% increased damage. So in this window, you could potentially have your holy power spenders doing 60%, 50%, 10%. Also, you could have 12% holy damage, 10% holy damage, and 30% just raw damage happening. So like this build has this ability to synergize for you to do like a crazy amount of just burst damage and take over a pull. So it's just like all of these nodes, all these capstones actually have the ability to synergize incredibly well together, and you perform well in single target, you perform well in AoE as well. Like if you look at